Are you ready to live a more free, healthy, and abundant life? Transform your yard into a food forest and create a system for self-reliance that's easy and enjoyable with our friends at Food Forest Abundance. No matter where you're starting from, you can become more self-reliant. And you can take your self-reliance to the next level by becoming a producer of your own food through growing and foraging. And learn how to turn your property into an income-producing source of economic self-reliance. They can help you get off grid and learn what systems to employ for food, water, and energy self-reliance, and live abundantly and in full connection with your property and what you produce. Click the link in the description to get started with your very own food forest and have your own sustainable source of livelihood and become self-sufficient with Food Forest Abundance. Just click the link in the description to get started with your very own food forest today. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is Mike Milks. Before I bring him on, I want to thank My Patriot Supply. They are the experts in emergency preparedness. With the possibility of course, more lockdowns, more draconian measures, it really couldn't hurt to have an emergency food supply. Thanks to My Patriot Supply, I have a 4-week supply of their awesome food. Stays good in storage for 25 years, and it tastes great. Right now, you get $70 off a 2-week supply and $100 off a 4-week supply of their awesome food. Like I said, it stays good in storage for 25 years, and it really couldn't hurt to have one of those right now. Just click this link in the description or visit preparewithfkn.com to get your emergency supply today. Also, please subscribe on our official backup channel on lbry.com. Those links are in the description as well. And if you've been catching our episodes lately, then you also know that our podcast was all of a sudden demonetized, and they're withholding our revenue. This was one of our primary sources of revenue, so we will be getting a new provider very soon. I really want to thank everyone that has made donations to help our cause here. It's because of you that we're still able to be bringing you these daily shows and content and amazing guests. If you'd like to donate to help us out, those links are in the description. Hopefully, we can find a provider that won't censor and demonetize us as soon as possible. The way things are headed, I don't know how much longer any of these platforms will be sustainable for independent or alternative media, but we're going to keep going as long as we can. But tonight I want to welcome Mike Milks. He is the creator of Morning Dew, that's DEW on YouTube. He is a stargazing Earth watcher who has an overall love for humanity and a particular understanding of weather and cosmology. Mike, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm excellent, Chris. Thank you so much for that warm welcome.
Well, welcome. Yeah, we've been talking for a while. I know that
yes, indeed.
I've been watching your show for a while. You've been watching mine. I used to, whenever I first started broadcasting, I was covering a lot of this stuff when it comes to Earth changes that are occurring on our planet right now. Now, although I don't focus on it as much as I used to, it's definitely something that we need to take a look at, and I've been meaning to do a few shows about some of the changes that are going on, and you're a perfect guest to have on because you have your own channel that focuses on a lot of the stuff that we're seeing right now that's happening on our planet that is not being talked about because all we see now, of course, is the COVID stuff happening, and that's all we hear about on our news. But whenever I used to report the Earth changes, it was quite startling, the dramatic increase in earthquakes, volcanoes, the strange changes in weather we were seeing. All these things are magnetic north moving, the changes in the sun. We're definitely going through a different type of cycle on our planet that needs to be taken a look at because these changes, from what I understand, could become very extreme within our lifetime. But before we get into anything, really, what got you started looking into this?
Well, it was probably about 30 years ago, when there was increasing studies and research into global warming theories and excuse me, the changes that we were going through on the planet, with all of the statistics saying that we're warming. But I myself, doing my own research, had found that a lot of these statistics were being fudged, and that there were actually some major events that I was witnessing every day, just searching on my phone, watching satellite imagery and looking at USGS for earthquakes and following volcanic activity. I noticed a dramatic increase within the past 5 years. And I had felt that it was coming. I was watching a lot of YouTubers talking about it. And when everything started to unfold before my eyes, I really wanted to share it with everybody, with my friends and family around the world. And when we look at what's happening along the West Coast, with the Long Valley volcanic field, Kosovo volcanic field, all of the activity up in the Northwest Rocky Mountains that is not being reported recently, it kind of makes you wonder why we're under lockdown when all of a sudden all these strange events and earthquakes and volcanic events are happening. Like, I'm not saying it has anything to do, it's just coincidental that we're going through these changes on the planet at the same time as we're under lockdown for a flu.
Yeah, it's very coincidental. And you mentioned the Kosovo field, the volcanic. They had I remember whenever I was reporting on this stuff, it was through 2008, 18 or 19. They had those big earthquakes in California, and it kind of triggered a series of these aftershocks that were lasting for a while. I haven't been following what's really been going on in that area when it comes to volcanic activity. But what have you uncovered? What's it like right now?
Well, recently the increased swarms through Nevada on the border with California, just east of Mono Lake, which is evident that it is a dormant supervolcano. I mean, there's a lot of places you look on Earth and it is evident that there is a catastrophic event. So I do believe that the volcanic field is lighting up again with these swarms through Nevada, moving westwards towards Mono Lake, and then southward into, it's been bouncing back and forth between Ridgecrest and Nevada. It's only a matter of time here before it splits right down the middle. And I mean, call me crazy, but a stargazing Earth watcher looking at the big picture, I received little visions here and there. And I'd hate to say, but I've envisioned multiple volcanic eruptions in our future.
Now, as far as these volcanic eruptions, that's another thing that I was noticing a huge increase in. Uh, What are your thoughts on the possibilities of a supervolcanic eruption within our lifetime in the United States? I mean, we have seen increased activity at Yellowstone. I was reporting a little bit, strange deformations here and there, a little bit extra activity at the Steamboat Geyser actually hit records whenever it was erupting a couple of years ago. Like I
Yes.
said, I haven't been following it as closely now. So, what are your thoughts about any kind of super volcanic eruption? And also, I want to get into why this is occurring, why the magma is on such the move, and the core of the Earth is responding the way it is. Uh, yeah, but first, what do you
To
think about
something.
the to something? What do you think about the possibility of a super volcano eruption?
I really don't think that is possible. I think that, I mean, Yellowstone is a dormant super volcano, but again, it is evident that it blew its top off, and it's probably never going to grow to its size again where it'll actually erupt. But when you look at the Cascades, and you've got Long Valley that leads right up into the Cascadia fault line, there are a lot of dormant volcanoes and as well active volcanoes. We look at St. Helens, who was only 40 years ago, where it had one of the largest eruptions recorded in our time. And when you look at on the other side of the world, Krakatoa, just last year and the year before, blowing its top off, and nothing left to it now. And that Krakatoa is pretty much the next beast that we would have to worry about. And then we've got multiple volcanoes. We've the Tau volcano, which that was a compromised crater. It just totally drained its lake. 3 years ago, we had Kilauea that did the same thing. It just seems fitting that all of these large eruptions are happening during a solar cycle, in which I've been talking about for the past 5 to 10 years, that we are on the verge and quite possibly going through a grand solar minimum, a low solar sunspot output. And it is evident across the globe that it is affecting, that space weather does affect our weather, and it does affect our magnetic field, and it is affecting our tectonic plates and volcanoes. When we go back, I've got a couple particular videos. I mean, this cycle that we're going through right now is, some say 2,000, some say 12,000, but on the map that I did go back in, it's a 400-year cycle. 400 years ago, you look back in our weather history, most of North America was enveloped into a mini ice age.
Yeah, that's what
1600s, 1700s, and during that time, and that Krakatoa, largest eruption ever. There's also Pele, I believe, during that time, and we saw dramatic decrease in temperatures worldwide. And I'm sure they saw catastrophic storms. There were reports of complete villages being taken out in Africa by lightning storms. Like, imagine a whole village being taken out by lightning.
I think that more and more modern day academia is coming to understand that the sun really controls everything in our solar system, and it has the hugest effect on our weather, earthquakes, volcanoes, everything that is coming, the energy coming into our planet, electromagnetics, everything is controlled by the sun. And if the sun is going through a certain phase or cycle, it's going to, of course, affect all the planets in the solar system. So let's talk about that. That you said it's grand solar minimum, and it looks like a 400-year cycle.
The 400-year cycle.
So for those planetary that aren't for that familiar, what is this? What's happening with the sun during these cycles?
Okay, so for those who don't know, our sun goes through minimum cycles for 11 years and then maximum cycle for 11 years. So during the output, it's basically breathing out, and the minimum is breathing in. So there's not much solar output during the minimums. But based on sunspot counts, right back to Galileo's time, they've seen a correlation and a wave, but also large dips. The Dalton minimum, the Maunder minimum. These were long, cold, low sunspot periods that caused catastrophic events around the world. Now, could these events actually be the ones that were depicted in ancient scriptures? On the walls and in caves where people were fighting for their lives? All across the world, there is caves. There are caves everywhere. Because there was a time where everybody had to go to the caves, go underground. So what was happening? What forced everybody underground?
Right. I want to address
Could it?
No, go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead and finish.
Yeah. Could it be that this planetary alignment actually creates such a magnetic rip in our planet that it actually causes the magnetic reversal. That's another thing that we need to talk about as well.
Yeah, that's on my list. That is definitely on the list. I want to address a question from my chat here. Ariel asks about the earthquake that hit the Maine border in New Brunswick, Canada. They say that there is a volcano in New Brunswick. Do you know anything about this?
Actually, yes, there are. After I saw that earthquake, I went to Google Earth and I started investigating right away because it was a very rare earthquake, and I was hearing a lot of conflicting reports. But in that area, yes, there are dormant volcanoes. That whole area is a volcanic field and is connected to the New Madrid. So that earthquake, it was weird because there were a bunch of mixed reports coming out that day that some strange stuff had happened. I don't know if you heard about that. Did you hear any strange stories coming out of Maine that day?
I heard about the initial earthquake and everything, but what happened?
Okay, so during the live stream and the earthquake came up, somebody from Maine had come into my live stream and said, wow, there was a loud bang, and now there's a 3.0 earthquake reported in Maine. So the loud bang comment didn't really spark anything with me until the next day. I read a story. Somebody sent me a story where, believe it or not, 50,000 Chinese troops had been bombed in Maine as they were supposedly infiltrating the United States.
Wow, very interesting. No, I had never heard anything about that.
Yeah, so this was a Canadian story that came out. And apparently there's a bunch of Canadian stories coming out right now where we're apparently harboring Chinese and that we're getting ready to attack United States. But it's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, that 3.0 earthquake in Maine was mostly, I'm sure, to do with tectonic movement that's going on. There is a lot of stress on San Andreas Fault up into Long Valley. And, you know, we also talked about the activity around Yellowstone as of late. Just as of late, there's been about, I don't know, maybe 25 earthquakes in the lake and around the lake in the past week. So that's something that I haven't seen, and even in my 3 years, is actual earthquakes in Yellowstone Lake. So it just, you know, I mean, there's so many changes that are happening around the world, and with the increased volcanic activity and the earthquakes, it really leads me to believe that this planetary alignment that we're going through, where all the planets are in one corner of the solar system right now. And when you go back in history to try to find that particular alignment, you have to go back 400 years. And to find it in the future, you go ahead 400 years. You'll find that exact alignment.
It's very
interesting. Now, during this, right?
Yeah, with the alignments,
so,
how they align with cataclysms on our planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you think about our three largest gas giants lined up in our solar system right now. That's a lot of power. That is a lot of power. And you can see that it's affecting our sun in the southern hemisphere with all of the sunspots popping up recently. I do believe that we're going to see the activity on the sun increase like before the 21st in a way where everybody's going to be looking up and everybody's going to be talking about it.
That's very interesting. Now,
yeah,
when it comes to, you know, we're calling this a grand solar minimum, but the sun displays, you know, just stranger activity. There would be more possibilities of, I guess, what you would call solar flares and electromagnetic kind of pulses from the sun during this period, would you say?
Yes, and actually during this time, I mean, scientists, astrophysicists have found that our magnetosphere, which is our shield, actually it decompresses during a minimum, so it collapses on our planet, and I think that has something to do with fueling in the mini ice age as well. I mean, you think about those colder temperatures, 10,000 feet up, are now 1,000 feet lower, and then we've got lower temperature altitude now, and that's, I mean, Guatemala has an extreme cold warning yesterday. Higher elevations, Guatemala, extreme cold warnings. Guatemala.
Yeah, the
That's the
weather is
tropics. This is
another
the tropics.
interesting phenomenon that's been happening. The crazy extreme weather that's occurring.
Hmm.
These crazy microstorms that occur in places that never used to get them, like European places reporting tornadoes that they've never had tornadoes before.
Yeah.
The extreme hurricane seasons we've been having, the flooding that has pretty much ruined whole seasons of crops. I believe it was for a couple of years in a row now, to where
Hmm.
it's causing crop shortages because of the amount of rain in certain places. The climate is kind of shifting and changing in different places, and we can see these weather patterns that are emerging that are different than any time in our lifetime.
Hmm.
And I don't know about anyone else, but this is something I've noticed for a long time. When you go outside and you look at the sun, it looks white to me. And I remember in my childhood, growing up in the 80s, the sun used to be orange or yellow. And
Or
that is,
yellow. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think that's just my memory. I think the sun
No,
has
it's mine too.
actually, yeah, the sun is white now. It's a different color. It looks like just like a big light bulb in the sky, and that appears to be, some of the evidence of the changes that's happening on the sun.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and we talk about the extreme weather patterns. I mean, we now have the most extreme Atlantic hurricane season on record. 4 Category 5 hurricanes went through the central tropics, devastating parts of Guatemala, Honduras, right up in there.
Yeah, I
Just
was living in South
free.
Louisiana at the time when those hurricanes, after they passed through that area, they came hit me.
Yeah,
It was
they
the
came and knew you.
craziest. It was craziest hurricane season ever. Yeah. Luckily, I
Yeah,
was in
and
enough high ground not to have any damage, but they had a lot of places that were really, really messed up from those.
hmm so I mean, we've got the catastrophic agricultural crop losses that have happened due to droughts, but not only now natural weather events across the United States. I mean, it's been devastating to you guys. My thoughts and prayers go out to all the farmers and all of my friends and family from around the world. But this situation that we're in right now, um, I do believe that our governments know that we're on the verge, we're on a tipping point. And the United Nations back in 2015 developed Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, which is to align every country in the world to the 17 steps of sustainable development. And this is a program that they've developed and are putting in full swing now. Unfortunately, this pandemic has provided an opportunity for them to help put these things into motion. But in the big picture, the big picture here is we are 8 billion humans living on the planet that is in peril. Our planet is in trouble right now, but it's not our fault.
Yeah, I
It's
did
not
want to
our
get to
fault.
that. We're always told that we're overpopulated, our CO2 emissions are killing the planet. It's us doing this,
No,
but I'm also told that you can fit the entire population of the planet in Texas. So I,
right?
there's some contradictions there, and I don't believe for 1 minute that the damage we have done to the planet can compare to the power of natural cycles that occur and
Are
take out entire civilizations.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, and if that is the case, I mean, if we are going through a catastrophic cycle and our governments know it, then it all makes sense. Is the best way to get control of everybody before the big shit hits the fan.
No,
And
I've
then they
heard this
can
before. I've
control
heard
everybody
that
afterwards.
this whole COVID op, it is an op. You can't deny that. For whatever reason it is, there are dozens of theories. I mean, the conspiracy theories around this whole thing are crazy. It could be everything from aliens to the Chinese to, I mean, interdimensional beings to whatever, robots trying to take over the planet, whatever conspiracy theory is going on right now. But the one that intrigues me is that there are, big changes coming that no one can control, that they can't control. Things like Earth changes, things like earthquakes, volcanoes, or even asteroids, meteors, threats from space, basically. Trump set up the Space Force. We don't ever hear anything from mainstream media about the changes that are occurring on the planet anymore. We have to go to independent researchers again, and now it's not a focus anymore.
So true.
It's not a focus for a lot of independent researchers anymore because a lot of people are turning to look at COVID and all this stuff. So it's an interesting thought that behind what's going on with this whole operation, that there could be some major problems on our planet coming up. It's very intriguing, and that was one of the reasons why I covered in the beginning, is because I saw some of these things happening myself. You look at the statistics and the numbers going back hundreds of years, and earthquake activity has increased over 1,000%, something ridiculous like that. So something's definitely building up. And I truly believe in sun cycles, and many people have different theories about what is actually causing this. Is it the sun? Is it outside protruders like Planet X? I've had plenty of guests on that think it's of that theory. But again, what resonates with me the most is that our sun is going through a cycle, and that the planet is definitely reacting to it in a big way.
Yeah, it really feels that way, and it's evident to me as an Earth watcher. And the early cold temperatures that we had here in Alberta this season, this was back first week of October. We dipped down to minus 23 Celsius in the first week of October. Now, we haven't ever seen cold temperatures that early here in Calgary, Alberta. But all of a sudden, we're seeing this Chinooks. Every week, we're seeing a Chinook. Now, a Chinook is when a low pressure system comes in from the Pacific, and it throws warm air ahead of it. And I mean, it'll be minus 10 east of us, but right over Calgary, it'll be plus 2. This warm air just kind of gets caught pocket. But the erratic jet stream is really got me concerned. I released a video 2 days ago, or maybe it was just yesterday, and I showed the upper level winds of our northern hemisphere, and the polar vortex right now is split.
That's actually one of the things I want to talk about
400.
is the polar vortex and some of the jet stream activity. That's very odd. I'm glad you brought that up. I was hoping you could explain a little bit more about how that affects us and what's going on with that.
Yeah, definitely. So right now, looking at the polar vortex, which is split right over Siberia and then parts of England. Over Alaska, I do believe that's where the other side is, but it looks like a huge S right now. You've got your high pressure and low pressure. Now, what happens with our upper level jet stream during the seasons? So if we were to look at the upper level winds in the Antarctica right now, they wouldn't reach over 150 kilometers per hour, maybe. But when you look at our winter season, Now here in the northern hemisphere, I'm looking at winds that are over 380 kilometers an hour at 10,000 feet. So something has really ramped up the speeds of our planet. The wind speeds, as well the strength, the velocity. When we kind of talked about Planet X there, I mean, there's a big theory. I mean, when you look at all of the solar systems that were found by Kepler, 90% of them had two suns. So 90% of the solar systems found have two suns.
You think it's possible that we're one of those binary systems, that we possibly have a sister sun that could affect us periodically? They have the Sitchin theory of, every 13,000 years or however many 100,000 years that this second sun comes around and affects our planet. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I can't confirm or deny. I really don't have enough.
Of course,
I haven't seen enough evidence to base any theories of my own.
That's really why I stopped covering it. The evidence, it's not there, because it could be any of the space phenomenon that we're talking about right now, including the solar minimum. When people post the pictures of the two suns, 99.9% of the time it's a lens flare or something wrong with the camera. It can always be solved. I have not seen anything that I would consider genuine footage of any planetary intruder or second sun. So that's really why I kind of stopped going down that road. I always consider it a possibility, of course, just like anything else. But I think we're leaning towards more something on I think it's a closer timeline, like you say, around 400-year cycle, that some cataclysmic event hits our planet, and you can go back in history and see that.
Yeah. And here's an interesting spot. I don't know, you guys ever search on Google Earth? If you're ever just touring around on Google Earth, I recommend it. I get lost on there all the time. But I found this one area in Africa where it looked like a series of rivers going out like a V. I mean, and it is. It's a series of rivers going out like a V. And there's life all around it, all around those. Now, 400 years ago, when historians were talking about these massive lightning storms and massive plagues that were hitting Africa and Europe, all across the world at the time, during these peak volcanic activities, low solar output. I think what ends up happening is a charge is set out, a charge, like literally a bolt that we can't even imagine. And I do believe that during this planetary alignment, that the magnetic field, like Earth is at the front of the sun. The sun's pulling everybody through our universe, right? And we're at the front right now. We're ahead of the sun and we're coming around. And when we get behind the sun with everybody else, it's going to be so charged up. We're going to have one of the most electromagnetic events on the planet. Another thing. So I was talking about the lightning strikes in Africa and those V's. So I think those rivers were actually caused by lightning.
Yes, I've heard this, it's some sort of plasma strike. It's so powerful.
Plasma strike, yes.
Yeah, that it could cause like canyons. There's some researchers that think some of our canyons were actually caused by these massive plasma strikes. There's evidence of that on here and on Mars. So that's fascinating too.
It is fascinating. So I find that, I mean, if that was to actually happen on our planet, I mean, just think of the repercussions of something like that. That would be worldwide.
Definitely.
It would be worldwide.
Yeah. Now, speaking of some of the things that are going on right now, I want to get into what your thoughts are on this electromagnetic interference going on with our magnetosphere, especially when it comes to our magnetic north. It's moving rapidly. It's moving towards Siberia, and
Hmm.
there's some that believe that it could eventually lead to a magnetic reversal, which would, basically set us back to the Stone Age when it comes to technology. Wipe out all our electric
Possibility,
grid.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on that? Because it's moving, and it seems at a certain point that it has to give, that something has to happen. Do you think that that's a possibility, a magnetic reversal?
I haven't really done enough research in it to know, but I know that every planet, every star goes through a cycle, just like the sun goes through cycles. But every so often, the poles flip. I mean, that's pretty much what the sun does to create its maximum and minimum cycles. Flips its poles, it reverses its polarity. So, I mean, when I think about it, it's sensical that yeah, our planet will do a pole flip. When we see the dramatic numbers and the dramatic shift towards Russia, I would believe that we could possibly be on the verge of a magnetic reversal. And maybe that's what's actually firing up all the volcanic activity and the tectonic plates around the world.
Right. And I know it was a couple of years ago that they had recently made the discovery of like 91 volcanoes under Antarctica, and they're showing more
Hmm.
activity there as well. It's just, more evidence that for some reason the core of our planet seems to be heating up. These magma plumes are expanding around the world. So
Hmm.
there is definitely something going on with volcanic. Do you think that that should be a major concern? Is volcanic eruptions in the near future?
I think so, yeah. I think so. I've looked a little bit into expanding Earth theory as well, and I do believe in the expanding Earth. I mean, that's how Earth was created. You know, it's been expanding all of its life, and maybe we are going through an expansion phase. Maybe we're growing more than we know it. Just on the planet, but we're also growing in our minds, in our hearts, on a conscious level. We need to grow with our planet.
Someone in the chat mentioned that's for the reason that they had prepared on these underground bases is so that they can move the elites in for whenever this time period occurs, whether it be
Yeah.
a mini ice age or some sort of pole reversal. Um, what are your thoughts on
or
that action?
volcanic of or a volcanic event that totally depletes the oxygen in our atmosphere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we
And
have.
so here's my theory on that. Here's an interesting theory. So I'm going to light a smoke right now. If you hope you don't mind.
Go for it, smoke away.
So there's a study. There's a study coming out of Ontario that tobacco actually kills COVID. I'm not kidding you.
Interesting.
It's true. So So here's my theory on this whole thing right now. So what if all of a sudden the sulfur emissions and methane emissions around the world started to increase to a point where it was affecting 8 billion people on the planet? So what if we are all actually already infected with this COVID-19, which is a common virus, but it's actually in the air and it came from sulfur emissions, methane emissions. It's known, and scientists have said that a lot of diseases actually come from volcanic eruptions. They think the Spanish flu came from Krakatoa. I've heard. So Bag them and tag them before the event. Get full control of the food before the event. Because whoever's left behind needs to be controlled, or else they'll be getting out of control because they'll be fighting for their lives. I'm fighting for my life right now. I don't want to be in a situation where I have to go to desperate measures to fight for my life. If this is a situation where they know is coming, then they need to be honest with us. And this pandemic has forced the world to almost an economic collapse. And they know it because they want to shift. They want to change. They want to change us. But when we look at us and what we're doing on this planet, we got to think to ourselves, do we need to change? Yes, we do. We do.
Yeah, it would not be surprising at all if that would be the case, and they do know it, because many people know the importance of not only astronomy but astrology and alignments of planets and how they affect things and how you can actually predict things and how certain events on our planet occur during certain planetary alignments. And I'm not just talking about weather or earth events. I'm talking about political, social, anything on our planet is actually affected by these alignments. I completely believe that these energies, through planetary alignments, you can predict events, you can look at certain things. I think that a lot of these elites, the top percent, use astrology in certain ways. And if that's the case, of course, they would know about any cataclysms. They would know about any cyclical alignments that would cause anything. And I think there's a lot of planning that goes around astrology when it comes to these elite circles. From what I've heard,
Couldn't agree more.
From what I've heard, that they have, if these billionaires, these beyond billionaires, they have their own astrologer. They're into that. They really believe in it and go by it. So it's definitely something to look at.
Yeah, indeed. In Mercury retrogrades, they're actually pretty important too, and they happen often. You can tell that there's a lot of large political movements during Mercury retrogrades. Now we have a particular Mercury retrograde coming up December 21st. So this is when the alignment happens. But Mercury will be going in between the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. And I mean, I can only speculate. But I do believe that during that time, a portal is going to open up for, I don't know, something, beings, conscious thought. I don't know. But I do believe that we're going to be shifting after that dramatically. And it's a Mercury retrograde.
Interesting.
So we have to be worried about war. I mean, as much as they're going to distract us with this COVID, there's still hundreds of thousands of people dying from war every day. It's ridiculous. Hundreds of thousands of people dying from starvation every day. Why aren't they talking about that?
Well, yeah, they don't want to focus on anything that would be meaningful, of course. You mentioned earlier briefly about a new ice age or a mini ice age. I've had a few guests on that have mentioned that we are, because of the grand solar minimum, we would be headed towards a sort of mini ice age just because of the shifting of our climate and the things that could possibly happen, possibly volcanic output that would dim the sun, causing this. What are your thoughts on an upcoming mini ice age?
I believe that we are here. I believe that we are here, and that we're going to start to see some big signs this winter. when we see how far south in latitude the cold air goes, when we're already looking at extreme cold conditions in Guatemala, we've got freezing temperatures that are already reaching Texas. They're going to keep sweeping under the rug these cold records, but all across 2020, we were breaking cold records, but we were also breaking warm records. So it's still going to be contradictory to them. They're still going to say it's us. But I can tell you, a volcano can release more carbon emissions and sulfur emissions in one night than we have in our lifetime.
Now, how urgent do you think this is? Do you think that we could possibly see some major weather changes that could, affect our population, that could cause a lot of destruction and death within, the next few years or any time period? We've already seen some extreme weather events from the past few years that are quite unusual. Do you think this is going to continue to have an uptick, and that, how bad do you think that it'll get within the next 5-10 years?
I think by 2030, we'll definitely be seeing the extremities of it. The atmospheric compression events due to our collapsed magnetosphere, increased cosmic charged particles also due to our collapsed magnetosphere. Our collapsed magnetosphere comes when we go through a minimum and there's less solar output put into our atmosphere. So when I'm looking at our magnetosphere models every day, the solar output every day, the solar output is still very low. Yeah, we have seen a lot of activity in the past 3 weeks to a month, but I mean, that's the most activity we've seen in the past 4 years. And I don't expect it to continue. But, I mean, you've seen the movie Day After Tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. So in that movie, they used a computer simulation, which was a real thing. They had an actual computer simulation, which created possibly the future weather and winds on our planet during a time of the Atlantic anomaly, the Atlantic warming. Now that is happening. The Atlantic warming is happening. And it's evident in Europe right now because they should be seeing a little bit of winter, but they're still seeing a lot of pretty mild weather. But in that model, what it created was a monster low pressure system, pretty much the size of Australia. And over the past 5 years, I've seen the low pressure systems on our planet grow to the size of Australia. And I've been watching satellite imagery of our planet for as long as they've been producing it. I've never seen the low pressure systems get so big and such deep lower level troughs. Deep lower level trough meaning a strong vortex helping a hurricane sustain for 19 days, the way Iota, I think it was Iota, Hurricane Iota, Category 5 that hit Guatemala. He was alive for 19 days because this strong, organized, low pressure circulation that wasn't able to break down. And I'm seeing that more and more often. When low pressure systems come into the Pacific Northwest Rockies now, sometimes it takes days for that low pressure system to actually make it across the mountains because it's such a lower latitude. And that's what we're seeing now is these lower millibar storms, monstrous low pressure systems the size of continents. And I think that we're going to see that. And quite possibly they may have to even raise the hurricane meter to a Category 6 in the future.
Now, with
I
all
think
the
that's
with all the changes that are occurring, there's a lot of theories that we've already been able to control and weaponize the weather. Actually, we've been using this in certain areas to kind of push this event along, or make things difficult in certain areas, either droughts or more rain, or just the ability to, through cloud seeding or whatever technology they're using, that they have complete control over the weather, and that a lot of the weather phenomenon we're seeing is because of government-controlled factions that are controlling the weather. What are your thoughts on
that? I do know that the modifications do exist, and they've been there since the Roaring '20s. So climate forcing is happening, and stratosphere aerosol injections are happening. They spray barium, which is a reflectant. I've heard that they're spraying barium in our skies to help deflect the cosmic rays.
Yes.
So are they trying to help us?
They had the
right?
What was it, Operation Solar Warden, or no, it was the Harvard one.
Solar Shield.
Solar Shield, yeah, where they admitted that they're basically spraying these heavy metals in the air to deflect these cosmic rays. So that's interesting. When you put that together with what's going on right now, they obviously know something's happening.
And they don't want people looking up anymore. And nobody looks up anymore anyway. They've got people consumed to their phones, looking down. I still look up every day, and I look forward to looking up every day. And I'm always looking at the big picture, and our big picture, as bleak as it looks right now, I know that our future is friendly, but we need to transverse, and we need to grow, and we need to learn. We need to stop thinking that we know everything. We need to stop thinking that science is fact. I mean, because we're still learning about science. I mean, there's still so much to learn on this planet. We're only beginning to understand how many volcanoes are on the planet. I've been reporting on the 43, 44 volcanoes that are actively erupting. But meanwhile, there's 1,500 to 2,000 volcanoes around the world that are listed, and that's all we found. I mean, there's still many that are in the oceans. So I think that as a human species right now, we need to come together and grow, and take all this as grains of salt, and make a good recipe for our future, a good recipe for my children's future, for your children's future, for my grandchildren's future. I've got 5 kids,
Wow.
Yeah, I've got 5 children, and my 3 boys are young, and I worry about what they're going through right now. And I talk to them all the time, and I say, you need to stay positive, and just always be eager to learn and to grow, and just the future is friendly. I'm trying to just instill as much positivity as I can. And that's what we need to do now, even amongst all these conspiracies around the world. Yeah, we need to come together now, and we need to spread love, light, positivity, especially during this crucial time.
Yeah,
Because who knows? Maybe this crucial time actually brings the second son, the Son of Man.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the most crucial times in our human history, and I think it's a good thought to close on what each of us can do, knowing that it's going to be a tough time in the future, knowing that we might experience these difficulties with earth changes and phenomenon, things we can't control, and the possibilities that these powers in control are basically influencing this, and we need to have more people wake up and realize this. But whenever you think of the possibility of using the COVID as a cover for the earth changes, it opens up a brand new discussion and door, and I think that's something that needs to be explored as well. But what do you think that people as individuals can do. I mean, there's not much you can do to control a solar minimum or any of the Earth changes, but I'm sure there are ways that you can prepare yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Start growing your own food. Be prepared for a global food crisis. Uh, be prepared for anything these days. Stock up on a couple weeks, maybe even a few months worth of food, water, power generator, because you never know when something can happen that can affect the whole planet. I mean, we had an Earth facing solar flare the other day. Earth facing. And we're lucky that it was not more intense than it was. We could have an event that totally wipes out all of our technology. As you say, puts us back to the Stone Age. We're fighting with sticks and stones again. We need to just be prepared for everything. And the best way to do that is to stay aware and prepared with Morning Dew, daily events worldwide.
Definitely.
I'm constantly, I mean, it is my life. I sit here on 3 screens, 12 different windows open, watching satellite data, watching earthquakes, watching volcanoes. There's a lot going on, and I'm doing my best and my part to be ready for a possible disaster. I mean, we had a close call with a tornado here in Calgary last year for the first time ever. So you just never know, right? You never know.
Yeah, definitely got to
be prepared.
Be prepared for anything, definitely. Mike, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this information with us. Again, before you head
you're
out,
welcome.
Let everyone know your channel is called Morning DEW, right?
Yes, Morning Dew, daily events worldwide, posting my severe weather analysis and disaster alerts from around the world, keeping humanity aware and prepared. Thank you so much for having me on, Chris. It's been fun. Really nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thank you, Mike. We'll have to do this again because I'm sure we're gonna have to have some more updates in the future.
Indeed, it sounds good.
All right. Until next time, everyone else, you have an excellent evening.